Our next video is on the subject matter having to do with Jonathan and David. Okay, there's a lot of speculation, actually very severe speculation, that Jonathan and David had a homosexual relationship based on the scriptures, and I think in 1 Samuel 10:27, somewhere in there, maybe 20:27 or something like that, 20:17, whatever, somewhere in there. You guys can look it up, and because David took off all his clothes and gave it to Jonathan. Well, I mean, Jonathan is the king's son, Saul's son, and so yeah, they had a maybe a hero worship mentality of each other with that. But there's a key verse here in this whole thing. This is a very simple thing to diagnose and come up with. It says, "For David did love Jonathan even as he loved his own son." Now, the word "love" there is the same word that was used in the first part of the verse. It didn't change in contextuality in the later part of the verse. Are we to assume that David fucked himself, and then therefore he also fucked Jonathan in that? Is that how we interpret that? And then, do they understand that there was a jealousy factor going on between Saul and David, because David was getting more acclaim by the people in the kingdom than Saul was when that? For Saul to make a derogatory remark in relationship to Jonathan about his relationship to David was sour grapes. It was an unfounded statement when that. Just like you might not like somebody, so instead of finding out something that's actually true about the person, you come up with some ad hoc remark when that, ad hominem. I don't know if they're one and the same thing. Anyway, come up with these remarks. Oh, well, sour grapes. Well, so and so is an asshole and that. So, and then two, one has to understand how the Jewish people work, especially in the hierarchies of government and the priesthood and that. They only have sex for procreation and that. There's no frivolous affairs going on. Sure, you may have read that Solomon had, several thousands of wives. Well, those were for the purposes of keeping peace with adjoining nations, but not just as other nations had done that. That was the whole reason behind Julius Caesar's association with Cleopatra. It wasn't so much that he was in love with Cleopatra. He just wanted. He was trying to ensure a situation where he didn't have Egypt kick his ass when that. But of course, down the road that changed, and the whole story is that after Cleopatra and Mark Antony had their little tryst when that, and they killed themselves because of their assassination with Julius Caesar, and Octavia came down. That was the end of Egyptian power, and the Egyptians had been defeated actually 300 years earlier by the Greeks. Remember the story about Alexander the Great? Anyway, so there's no they're have a very disciplined life, these people, and the sexual content or the sexual marriage orientation for the Jews, especially amongst the hierarchy, amongst king, David was a king, was that you get married in September and you have sex only in December and March for procreation and that. And then after your wife is pregnant, you don't touch her for 6 years. If it's a boy, and you don't touch her during the pregnancy and after pregnancy. After pregnancy, if it's a boy, you can't touch her for 6 more years. And when you do it again, you must only do it in December and March. And if it's a girl, you don't touch her for 3 years. So you have to get away from this idea that the Jewish Empire, especially in the hierarchy classes, was involved in some orgy deal over there. They wouldn't if they were consigned to strict rules amongst themselves. How the hell would they have allowed it to happen with David and Jonathan and that? Now, when David did his, that happened later on with David and Bathsheba and that, and then the prophet, Nathan or whatever it was, came in there and laid down the law to him and that. Now, how come the same prophets that were in place back then? How come they laid down the law to David and Jonathan and that? Were they asleep? They weren't around? Do you think the only prophets were back then were just David? There was a whole school of prophets in the background with that. The fact that David was or Saul was the first king. Before that, they had judges. Judges back then were the head judge over a thing like a Sanhedrin or what they call the council, and in that council they had 80 other types of judges, or actually prophets underneath them. This was established by Moses, but also was there was an embellishment by Elijah, which later was picked up by Samuel, which of course Samuel was during this time period. Now. So get rid of this notion that it was a sex party over there. They had bigger issues to address than having sex.